Hello, so today, following on from the previous video, we need to start thinking about how we improve our stepping. And we have two big problems with stepping. The first problem is, well, now that we've developed our idea of somatic timing, how do we then bring that into use with steps? And I'll tell you the problem straight away. So if I want to go, let's say I want to go jab, cross, and then step, that's quite a slow step. 1, 2, step, punch, and it's got a split harmony as well. It doesn't have to have, but usually it's just in the nature of the movement that we go 1, 2, step, and then punch. So there's no harmony of hand and fist. You're not landing together like that. Our key movement and movement principle that we draw from Yiquan. And because it's 1, 2, 3, because it's a split harmony, it's slower, and we lose that somatic timing that we want to bring in. That's kind of linking our combinations together. It's not wrong to have a split harmony. It's really useful, because usually a split harmony can be changed into a harmony. So it can be like 1, 2, 3, and the harmony is with the cover or something like that. Then boom, boom, change into something else. Remember this idea of that I talked about, I think in the previous videos, moving forwards, backwards, sideways, this way, this way, this way, this way. That we can do lots of things that are harmonious with that, like a cover, like a movement. So step and avoid into a punch or something like that. But if we want to start bringing it directly into punches, it's too slow. It's like a barrier point that you'll feel even before getting into doing sparring, just getting on the bag and just boom, boom, and then you think, yeah, okay, so I've learned this. I've learned that I can go this way, and I've learned that I can go that way, and I've learned that I can go that way. So let's say we're just thinking about moving forwards, and I can do like that, and I can time everything with my somatic timing with a step forward, like that. But if I want to step out like that, then if I go 1 step, 2, all of a sudden it's a split harmony and I lose my somatic timing. So, because I want to go 1, 2 like that. So I want to do it like that. So I've got to change my footwork, and my footwork's all of a sudden got to speed up and become more explosive. And then with explosive footwork, really this is the principle, we call it escalating basics, that what counts as a basic changes, and you don't realise you've been practicing all along the groundwork for the next level of improvement. So we've been practicing our steps all along, and if you've been practicing along with me and doing footwork drills and making up your own footwork drills and punch drills with steps, you'll have reached that 95% point where you're probably not really going to get any better at footwork just by doing more drills like that. You've got to think about how you're doing footwork, and we've got to start evolving it into explosive footwork. And that links into our other key principle of Fa-Li. Remember when I talked about kicks, I said that we use this concept of compound Fa-Li, that the initial movement into the kick is Fa-Li. So let's say I'm going to do a front kick, the movement up like that, and then the turning round the axis is also Fa-Li, and that's two separate instances of Fa-Li. They're just done so close together that they become a compound movement. So it's very much the same principle that we're now going to start applying to punches, and then we're going to bring it back later and apply it to kicks again, which is just going to add another level of complexity to our movement. That will be chain Fa-Li with compound Fa-Li. So let's say explosive movement into the step, and then compound Fa-Li into the kick, something like that. But I'm not doing it full power, but that's the idea. So understanding these concepts and what we mean by them: chain Fa-Li one after the other, compound Fa-Li, lots of things in the body doing Fa-Li, but it all linking together into one movement. And then by using compound Fa-Li and using explosive stepping, we can start solving some problems. So we can go, that's the first one, obviously, where we use this step like that. And you've got to get that step really, really fast. You can't just do it. And we very often see it trained like 1, 2, 3, like that, to make that work in reality, not be a split harmony, and to use our somatic timing with it. That step's got to be really, really fast. So like that, straight out like that. That way you can use your somatic timing for for the combination. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Explosive, fast stepping. And it'll solve some of our other problems, like we want to go like that. Now we've got no split harmony, it's exactly harmonious, so all we can do is stepping in and using this kind of explosive stepping. Of course, it's got dangers, and it makes the posture and the stance a little bit vulnerable to being knocked over. But so it's just stepping, to be honest, so it's just standing there. So what you will find, however, is by learning to use explosive stepping, you don't have to use it all the time. You can just use it judiciously when you need it. It's like a bridge, so there's certain little problems in Yiquan, and particularly using ambidextrous. I mean, this is another key idea that we're linking into it. Using our ambidextrous postures, there's certain key points where you just think like, there's a barrier here, this it doesn't work, the stepping is too slow. And the bridge between that solves that problem is explosive footwork. That's it. Being able to hit the bag like that without a split harmony, or being able to move fast around. Because it's the same thing that, it's used all the time in other martial arts, but we're just really thinking about it scientifically and training it step by step, so that just at those judicious points, when we need to hit, when we need to move fast, that we can use our explosive footwork. And then there's just a couple of little points to remember. One is that it's very shoe wearing based, and each one is very shoe wearing based. You can do these things without shoes on, but there's always a risk that you're just going to crumple over the toe and hurt the toe. But generally speaking, it's quite a shoe based concept. Having said all that, we can then just start thinking about some very simple exercises. And first one is just, well, think about where your imaginary centre line is. We don't want that to move forward at all, but we just want to change that. And see, I'm changing back into I'm not keeping it forward like that. We can do that, that's a different exercise. And if you can't do this first one straight away like that, back into your 45-degree posture like that, you can try just doing it like that first, like that. And you can see that it's very different to just stepping. With stepping, you can just roll your weight forward. You can just roll your weight over the limb like that, on the limb. For this, either your weight's got to come up, which is the way we want it, or you just got to kind of suspend and drop like that. But we want the weight to come up because this is going to be our far lead off the floor like that. So just practicing like that. So I'm now taking all of our basic exercises and thinking about the way that the whole curriculum interlinks like Lego pieces. We can go back and think about all our basic postures and start bringing them into this kind of explosive footwork training. But I guarantee you're going to find it harder than you think. So one of the things that's quite difficult to maintain, that you need to practice in the exercise, is keeping your weight forward. Look, keeping this curve on the weight forward, this body curve like that. So you can try first of all just with your arms like this, like that. Because if you don't, then it's quite easy to go off balance like that with your weight backwards. And we need this anyway, because obviously this is our actual combat posture, so we need this posture. We don't want to be going like that, leaning back on there, unless that's deliberately like what we're leaning, what we're practicing for, something like that, or some more advanced skill. We need our basics to build up to that kind of skill. And we also, by the way, need our basics to build up into combinations. So today we're just going to look at single postures and how it does. There's enough to look at and train just with that. Just like building blocks, focus on this, get this right. When you're at the 95% point with this, then your body will know itself that it can move on into the thinking about how do you integrate this with combinations. So it's far too dangerous to dogs because it's release force with the legs. No, go on. This isn't the game. And now we start just bringing in the basic punch. Look onto onto the front pivot routine like a Michael Jackson. And you can hear straight away that it doesn't quite, the harmony of the hand and the fist is a little bit out of time. It is when you just step normally, you don't hear it. It's usually lost in the wave-like movement. So as long as it's close enough, so don't overly fetishize it. But you can hear there's just a slight like that. This is of course just empty stance from traditional wushu. Then the next exercise we need, so it's closely related, is to just change into the back pivot routine. So this is what we call kickback routine, where it kicks back like that. This is one of our most important routine concepts because we use it all the time when we're on the move to do explosive footwork that immediately roots into the floor like that to solidify your hip. So it's in many ways much more common than this, doing it this way. This is a little bit more of a fancy switch, whereas the kickback routine, you use it all the time. It's absolutely bread and butter. So to practice, so you see the weight lifts, and just kick back with it. My foot's got to lift a little bit, don't want it to drag too much, then the ball of the foot, and then just. So to practice it just on the spot, not moving forward. And you can see that practice like this, it's not particularly difficult, it's not even particularly explosive if you want to use that. We do much more explosive stuff when we're releasing Farley in the arms and that kind of Farley. It doesn't, because it's kind of a bigger movement than that, so it doesn't quite look that explosive. It's when we start bringing it into and integrating it with other things that we start seeing more explosivity in the movement. So we step back like that, and what we want to do now is go into the cross. But remembering, like, we don't want to be moving forward first. That's a higher level skill. We want to be just on the spot like that, just keep it on the spot. So, and also the other difficult thing is we're going to change like that, so it's a little bit more taxing for the E, for the intent. And we start to learn some really interesting things about our intent and this idea of this supercomputer, that in many cases it can't compute really basic calculations, like really basic acts of coordination that baffle it immediately. And that's entirely due to being repressed as via physical ideologies, that you've just never needed to, for most people, you've never needed to be this coordinated even to do really basic things. You see it all the time in traditional wushu when people can't go leg raise, like lift, down, step, or people can't do 1, 2, well, people can't do that, and they're like, the genius of wushu, that it just starts to restructure your intent like this, in this relationship with the body. So for this one, it's changing like that, which may just baffle your mind a little bit. Like that, with the kickback routine. And of course, from there you can change and do all the other things. So the first exercise that we did, like that, we can, and it really lends itself to the hook, because you're doing a bigger movement around the axis, so you're getting more, you're feeding more into that equation of mass times speed into the hook. It looks a little bit daft done like that, I recognise that, but when you actually bring it into sparring, start boxing people with your movements and stuff like that, it really slips a little bit there, but that's the other danger of this kind of movement. There are slip risks. It's risks with everything. Go on, love, it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. my awesome power might hurt you, and that would be terrible. That would be the worst thing ever in the world. So go on. No. Go on. Be a good boy. So similarly with the backhand hook, only now we've got this thing where the legs are going one way and the arms are going. So we've got this kind of twisting around the axis, which we've not really looked at before, kind of twisting farly, like that. Really, it's just closing. So when we talk about open and closing in our farley, open, closing, this is just closing because the hips are like they're coming close together like that. It's just closing farley, but it's a little bit like the centre line is twisting in opposite. Bottom's going like that, top's going like that. So that's the thing you've got to get. And staying on the spot as well with it. So change it to the front hand. So that kind of thing anyway, so being able to use it explosively in the moment. So you can see the way that it's all linking together now with the theory and the understanding that I've been presenting all the way along and building it, your understanding of it, that these are task-specific adaptations, so it's the same but different. The cross is just a little bit different to the hook. It's the same but it's different. They're all just task-specific adaptations. And also the other thing to note is we want this somatic timing still, so we still want this feeling of relaxation from the shoulder. That helps add power anyway, even if we don't bring it into another punch. That's our key punching or arm striking concept, so we don't lose that. And that'll become more important later on when we do more advanced versions of these that we're not going to do today, but more advanced versions. We need that. Well, we need it all the time. It's our key. It's one of our quintessence principles, so don't lose that in there. So when you want to feel like that's relaxed and you're getting that little bit of a wobble onto the doggy's eyeballing me like, this is not fair. We've only had one ace walk and one plate of chicken today. How is that fair? And exactly the same thing when we come into do uppercut, remember we want to lean back a little bit more with the uppercut. So again, it just creates a slightly different ask that we've got to task adapt to. And the same, if we're going to do the backhand like that, the back, that we're just leaning back a little bit with the posture, but other than that, it's the same. It's the same but different. So these are our core task-specific adaptations for a jab, cross, hooks and uppercuts. They're the most fundamental. Now, even on the same basic exercise, another task-specific adaptation that we're going to change into the front push like that. And we really never do that with the pivot routing. It's always now I've said that, I'll eventually think of a situation where we do use the pivot routing, but it's pretty much always the kind of scrape routing, flat, the foot, toes hip, flat, like seeking step. And the body needs to be curved into the posture like that. So it's a different landing for the same explosive foot movement. It's actually much more difficult to do off the spot with this, because to get the right distance between the legs, because usually we do that so the legs go with the scrape routing, the legs go a little bit further apart at the hip point, and that's the length of stance that we want to hit with when we do this. That's very hard to, like, particularly for beginners, to actually have the intent able to measure that, to work in that. But what it does, understanding that takes your understanding on an entirely different level, where you see like, right. So when we talked about stances and then being units and half units and quarter units of the same thing, actually we're teaching this machine that the intent is taking control of. We're teaching it a paradigm, a way of interfacing with reality that it can use for things like this. So we're teaching it like a measurement system that it's going to intuitively do when we use our footwork. And here's a great example that we've got to get this kind of, it's like 2 stances, 2 units to get the right posture for this. And the intent has got to be able to do that intuitively, but it's not innate. We're teaching it. We're teaching it this system of bodily measurement that's linking into everything, measurement and timing, somatic timing, and step by step through drills, we're making it all linked together to the point where it can be intuitive. So what you've got to think with this posture is just think bigger posture like that. And also anyway, when we do this posture, usually we consider it like a backhand posture. We route it with the kickback routing like that. So if you can just keep in mind, like, just do a bigger posture and do a bigger kickback routine, you can kind of get it. So like that. And then just reset back, that's the best way. Just reset back like that. And reset back like that. Not that hard. So there's one more that we can think of that we want to hit with the lead palm. And we imagine someone who's facing us, mirroring our stance, so they're facing like that way, their body's that way, and I'm going to push them that way because that's their weakest axis, and I'm going to push like that. And for that we've got to push on an angle like that, so it's mirroring my chest angle, and I'm visualising that their chest angle will be like that. It's one of the things with palm pushes that people don't always take into account, that people move around and their bodies are on angles. You can't always just push them like that. You know, very often you're going to push with that hand. If they're on an angle, you're going to push with that hand, that's going to hit, and that's not. So it's okay just moving around going like that, but actually it's nowhere near as easy in reality to push people like that. So what we want is this palm this way, and we're going to change the posture like this into a push posture, so like that. So, you know, it's not, it can be explosive, but it depends how much power. Like when you just do it on the spot like that, it doesn't look all that fast, but when someone's got to react to it and you're just right in the middle of everything that you're doing, then it suddenly looks far more explosive and it's far more effective when you start integrating it with your other footwork like that. So again, just back into the kickback routing, and this hand's just up like that, as per normal. Just like for a jab, release force on an angle this way, and then just change like that. Lead it from the hand that's out, that pulls back, like it's pulling your whole posture back into the, and the movement on the left begins on the right, movement on the right begins on the left. It's pulling your whole movement around like that in one movement. And so far that's just our moving forward and backward like that, with absolutely no walk, no throwing a ball, nothing whatsoever involved. But there's a few other really important explosive steps, basic steps that we need to cover as well. So the next one is instead of coming straight through like that, we do more round like that. And this, as you can probably imagine, starts being a little bit more useful for certain other things. I mean, it can be useful for like that, for like the hit the leg and hit back for the big hip sweep like that. But it's also obviously useful for helping to train round kicks and bringing it into our kicking footwork. So start with the most basic version, which is just flat footed, that we can just practice on like that. Please be careful with this because you don't really want to be completely flat footed. You should actually just hit with the ball of the foot. It's quite easy to stub the toe and go over like this. The flatter you keep your foot, the more likely that is to happen. Or if you lift your foot, the easier it is to slip like that. Like that. It's probably a technique, by the way, to do it like that for different things, but it depends how advanced your footwork is. So anyway, just to start off with, ball of the foot actually lands first, and the hips lead the movement. So if I slow it down a little bit, you can see the hips go first. The hips go first, and then release force from the legs. You can do it like totally from the legs like that, but it's hard to get the kind of power that we want in that. So we just lead a little bit from the hips. And this can be useful for different things, usually for just moving out of the way and round someone, left or right, just particularly if their legs there and then we're coming in, we move out of the way this way using a different kind of step. Because it becomes awkward, like if I want to use a straight step like that but I want to move round, it becomes quite an awkward little step. If I just do it like that, it becomes much easier just to get a little bit of side angle on that. But if I want to do it with a straight step, particularly with the hook or something like that, it becomes quite an awkward movement. You'll find straight away your body just won't do it like that. Your body will just, if you're going for the hook, it'll use this rounder explosive step. And then when we start bringing it in practically, we'll start seeing like just a little bit of a pivot route up on the heel like that, just exactly the same. Just lands like that. Don't want to overdo it because we don't want to buckle over on the ankle, and that's also very important why you have to practice basics first like this to learn to keep the body weight back. Otherwise you start doing that, leaning forward, and breaks our rule of we don't use pivot routing when we're leaning forward on the leg because it can buckle the ankle. So we use this chopping up hook. And you can see the body movement that this arm is going first and this is following on like that, rather than just at exactly the same time. Like if you try and do it like, it's like like in your mind you think like you shouldn't do it like, because it's like a little bit of a tell that the arm goes first and the hips go and then into the movement round. It's a little bit of a tell. But if you try and do it without that, the reason there's that, see that little gap like that, the reason that that's there is because of the way the body has to twist in to get this movement around. And if you don't do that, if you just try and do it like it's almost impossible just to do it on the spot like that with power. And it's not an enormous mystery, it's just that all your weight is on your legs. And I think like the heavier you are relative to your body size, the more you'll feel this effect that, yeah, we can do it, but we'd have to jump up first like that to get the weight off the floor, then it can just turn around the hip, but it's still not as powerful. So we've got to like prime the movement like that. It's got to follow in like that, pulls it round like that to generate the far leg and the force that we want. So it's just a compromise. It's a compromise that you have to make to get. It's so fast anyway. Most people are just not gonna. That's not enough. In fact, it almost pays for itself because, okay, so it's a little bit of a tell, so they notice this hand move. Their attention's on that hand, but the hit's coming in from. It's almost appearing in the west, striking the east. So try it yourself. It's like physical body knowledge. It's easy to look at it and say, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You should do it all in one go. No, try it. It's just. You can't generate the power that you need to do that. And the same if we change to backhand, like it goes onto the rear pivot routine this time. This time we can actually get it much closer, like the arms move together like that. Again, try it and you'll see the difference in the movement. That it becomes significantly easier to do that. Yeah, as soon as I change to doing it with the front, you've got to have that, just that little bit to move the weight. Okay, the next step that we need is a little bit like our triangular step like that. It might not look like, but in my mind I feel like it's going like is going like that, the footwork. That's the feeling of the foot, that it goes like that, in and out, but it's on the spot again like that, and just opens up. So relative to our opponent with a little bit of side on, could be if they moved over there, but usually it's like you avoid and hit under that way. So like that, and into the rear pivot routine. And we can just practice just the straight like that and back, or we can just change like that. But really all that's practicing is a big move over like that. Doesn't really practice the step in the way that we want it. So you're better off just going and then resetting that way, and then reset and so on, and do it like that. Or usually it's easier just to start with just do it one way, so and reset, reset, reset. Your power generation changes with this movement, so this is something else that we need to consider, and it's the call it compensatory power, or step compensating for power. So for example, I've talked before about if you do a jab off the spot like that, and you're only going for one, you can get this big movement. But when you're going for a step, you usually truncate that movement. I know I use the words truncate and curtail alternately, but I mean the same thing by it. You truncate the movement more, but that's compensated for with the step, with the momentum of the step. One of the ways that happens is you make the step more explosive, so like, and that compensates a little bit for the loss of the big power. But with this posture, when you feel like that, when you do it like that, it's very tempting to pull the arm in and push out because you feel the loss of power straight away. But try and just control that in your mind and not do it on the other way. Let the explosiveness of the movement compensate for the power. It doesn't feel like it because your intention is trained to be in your arm rather than your whole body. So it's very well. So it's quite hard to coordinate as well, by the way, if you're not used to it. It's the lead hand it's changing into the backhand, but it hasn't got the backhand extra reach leading into the momentum, so it just feels in your mind like it's weaker. So remember, really, it's just a jab. Let the explosiveness of the movement compensate for the loss of power. Really focus on, there's my hand there, and it's there. Teleport like that. Don't be tempted to like that, pull it in like that. We don't usually want a backhand posture with this. I mean, there's, you know, in the infinite possibilities that could occur, there may be like, well, there's a Yourself Yiquan posture very much like this, where you uppercut off to the side like that, something like that. You might want to do something like that, but it's quite an obscure. It's an obscure sort of movement for this. Usually it's the lead hand that does the strike. There's another step you can practice, but it's mostly for balance, and that's just doing it like practice like that. We'll come back to that another time because it is useful for other things, but you can practice that just on its own. The thing that's more important to emphasise today is to think about all of your other steps that we've learned, all of your basic steps. So the one I alluded to before, the basic seeking step with the jab that we've been practicing so far, like 1, 2 like that. It's quite slippy in here, and that is also another thing I said before, I learned during lockdown, slipping on all the stones in the car park that I was training in. It's quite easy to slip with some of these postures, so you just got to adapt. Changing this to a more, just getting this posture faster and using that as compensatory force in the punch. So slipping a little bit. Using it as compensatory for using the momentum forward as compensatory force in the punch to add extra force into the punch. And there's some little tasks, specific adaptations and some things that happen when you're seeking step hits. It may well just turn in a little bit like that with the force because there's more force. So it's likely to do that a little bit, that's absolutely fine. But then with some of the others, the basic punches and basic steps that we put together before, there's slight task specific adaptations when you come to do them faster. So for example, the kickback routing and the cross step like that. So we want to move it forward. The thing to really watch out for here is the weight going too far forward. So you've got to, even with the moving forward, if your weight's too far, I'll do it with my weight too far forward like that. It's just so easy to go over and over balance. So just keeping the weight centered between the two. And it doesn't look like it's because of just the way the weight is all down on the front leg like that. And this is my this is my central axis, even though this leg is stuck out further. So that's where I'm balanced. And what I did there was, I mean, I don't want to talk about that today, that's another thing that we need to look at. Like our explosive stepping concept becomes much more advanced than this, as you can imagine. Once we're in the pivot routine, using that to push forwards into the next movement like that. But we'll look at that another time. And that's one of the ways that we compensate for the fact that the pivot routing can be quite unbalanced like that. We just use it. We use it to our advantage, push into the next movement. That's just flagging up that this concept of explosive footwork is going to become more sophisticated, more complex. But we need to build step by step, literally. So, and the same for like when we do a hook, like I'm thinking about moving forward, moving back, and just practicing the postures like that, moving forwards, moving back on the spot. Just getting it faster, getting it sharper. Landing the root right is the hardest thing I've also said before. Go and watch people on the punch bag at the gym. Now I talked before about when people throw a javelin and the back foot comes off like that because it's a different kind of force that you want to project it for miles like that. That's a different kind of than we want, where it's just shock forward. We want to hit it so hard that the inertia just can't contain the force. The back goes straight up like that. And to do that, we need to learn how to use this kind of more explosive stepping. But critically, we've got to learn how to land the roots. If you don't land the roots right, you won't get it. You can't go like that, on the toe or something like that. So even though there's lots of great fighters who don't use this pivot routing and this kind of these routine concepts, but to make it functionally work with the explosive stepping that we need in order to use that kind of force, then you have to practice like this. You have to practice the pivot routing, and then you need the pivot routing in the fast movement, because you can't do it like that onto the toe like that. Everything's just gone. It's not how it's not the same as throwing a javelin. It's not the same thing at all. And then exactly the same for all of the steps that we've gone through. It's just a matter of speeding them up, and then just looking at the task-specific adaptations that are required in them, and the different things that happen to your balance and so on. So just moving back. Speeding up the steps. What the ones did we look at? So getting these little shuffles like. So I'm using my quarter routine there. Chop down, hit up. It's a little bit more advanced. Like that. Just getting them all faster, more explosive. You should already be at the 95% point for the normal steps. Now it's just starting again. Get up to the 95% point, making them more explosive. Integrating them with punches. Same if we move. just getting more explosive with our movement. And there's a really important lesson here that, yeah, okay, it's part of the Yiquan paradigm that a lot of our basic, like bringing strikes up to a lock point, practicing our stances, a lot of it is done like very relaxed to preserve the body. But you can't get it. You can't go on to the next level unless you go on to the next level. You've got to push into the next level. You've got to use explosive footwork, because if you're just doing it like, you don't feel the task-specific adaptations that are necessary to go on to the next level, and you can't do it when you really need to, which is in a fight. So, you know, you've got to be practicing these postures. You've got to be practicing them. You've got to be practicing them fast. Well, you've got to, or, you know, like, you've got to be feeling the way the shearing forces all work. And also, that's another thing, your body has got to become used to those shearing forces. It takes a massive toll on your body. And if you can't do it, your body can produce more power than your body can contain. So, in the old Xingyi manuals where they talk about strengthening the back and the importance of the back, and a lot of hocus pocus around the spine and understanding the spine and the way the spine integrates with the movement, comes from this really basic fact of, if you can actually do this stuff, then the shearing forces that your body produces are so big that you require to be really strong, particularly around the back, and that's what you really feel it. Loads of people who practice Yiquan really seriously, at some point they get this like lower back pain that you've got to work through and stretch off and think about your posture, and that's because you're strengthening up that part of the body. And it comes and goes, it will come and go all your life, all your career, because it's just the shearing forces on your body around that area. It leads into loads of hocus pocus and superstition about, you know the stuff anyway, and you know that I don't believe in it. Or it's not about believing or not believing, it's about in each one, everything goes on to a more sophisticated understanding. We take the same concepts and we understand them in simpler, more profound ways in harmony with the Tao, rather than meaningless, esoterica. The real mystery is in simple things. So I'm not sure I need to demonstrate every posture as the dog wants to go out, but just thinking about how you use your footwork explosively, integrating it into using basic punches, basic techniques. And what we're going to come back to some point, not too far away, what we're going to come back to is looking at slightly more advanced versions. So when you get to the 95% point, working with these basic speed ups, these basic explosivity upgrades into your footwork, then we'll start looking at how we then start integrating combinations in. Remember, when you're doing all of these postures, again, just don't lose this, because we're going to need that somatic timing skill. It's fundamental to our practice to bring it into explosive combinations, and that will be a little bit in the future. You've got to practice that first. You've got to get that step by step. It's nowhere near as hard as you think. It's nowhere near as hard as people make out. If the method is clear, you can get it really, really quick, and that was what Yiquan was designed to do. So that's it today. Go and work on those things. Keep practicing your standing, because you need that relaxation and the whole body interconnectivity that's going to form together to help you use your, what we call, omnidirectional force. We'll look at that in the very near future. I'm going to go and take the dog for a walk. One love. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.